Okay, we're going to begin. Welcome to week 2 of the Mystery and Mystique of Time. We're going to discuss, throughout this course, we're going to be discussing astrology and time. Menachem ran the first week, where he gave some perspective of how much we should care for astrology altogether, but once we've had that introduction, we can get into some Jewish teachings about some of the zodiacs. Now, there's a few more if anyone needs on the coffee table over there. I've also got a few. This is just notes. Mostly you can either use it during or afterwards. If someone asks you at the end, well, what was it about? And you say, oh, it was lovely, but wait a sec. Oh, wait a second. So now you have this paper. You'll be able to take it home. Now, our world is governed by natural forces on a basic level. We can look at the world and see how there's a certain of course we need certain natural things. We need the right temperature. We need the right elements present. There's a lot of things that we need for the world to run physically. And then we have in terms of how it runs in terms of the economic systems and the governance systems. But beyond that, there is a whole nother level of reality. And all of existence is also governed by the flow of spiritual energy. So our life force, the fact that I'm alive right now, the fact that the deserts in the center of Australia are there, the fact that anything is there is all because we are all recipients of this flow of divine energy. Now, the Kabbalists identified 12 combinations of energy that comes from God. These come from, there are 12 ways that you can mix, you can combine the 4 letters of God's name. In God's holiest name, there is the Hebrew letter Yud, then Hey, then Vav, and then Hey. Now you can combine them to make 12 different words. You can have it in that order that I just said it. You could have it in another order, Yud, Vav, Hey, Hey. You can have Hey, Hey, Vav, Yud, etc. You can have 12 different combinations. The reason is, for those mathematically inclined, it would normally be 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which would be 24. But 2 of the letters are Hey, so that halves the amount of combinations, and therefore you've got 12 combinations. Now, each of these letters represents a certain type of energy. And when they are bestowed to us, when they're given to us in a different order, the energy is slightly different. And that is the basis for this idea of every month having its style, every month having its power and its energy. Now, this is also true with all names. Just like with God's name, it's a certain energy. Your name, every person's name here, has a certain spiritual energy. And that's one reason I'd encourage anyone, if anyone doesn't have a Hebrew name, we can call us and we'll arrange a ceremony of, you'll pick a Hebrew name and we'll officially give you a Hebrew name. We had it a few months ago with a fellow who didn't have a Hebrew name. He was very excited to receive that. Okay. So there's these 12 different flows of energy. Now, because there are 12 flows of energy, that's why there are 12 months. The French at one point wanted to make it a more metric system, apparently wanted to make 10 months. It apparently wasn't a very successful endeavor, but they tried. Other things the French did lasted longer. But for some reason, it's always been 12. It's another, by the way, another aspect of time, which is seems to be, it definitely relates to Judaism, is the idea of having a 7-day week. There's no logical reason to have a 7-day week. The Torah begins with this idea of a 7-day week, and the Kabbalists indeed talk about how every day of the week has a particular energy as well, just like every month has an energy. So it's also a sort of a Jewish type of concept. The Russians at one point wanted to change the number of days in a week, but also wasn't successful. Okay. Now, we've got a lot of 12s. We've got the 12 months with the 12 zodiacs. We have if you look at a cube represents fully expressed existence. You could have one dimension is really just a dot. 2 dimensions, you've got a line, right? And then real three-dimensional, the ultimate of three-dimensional is a cube. A cube has 12 lines. What are they called? The 12 edges. There's some other word for that? Huh? No, not the sides, the edges. But there's a word for the edges. I don't know. There's I think perhaps a more mathematical type word. But be it as it may, a cube has 12 edges. And that's also because when you fully express reality, it's going to come out as 12. That's also why the Jewish people have 12 tribes. Most Jews today are unaware which tribe they come from. The largest tribe was Judah, and that's why we are called Jews, because Jew is short for Judean. So we are Judeans. Where is Judea? Anyone know? What's Judea called by most people today? Yeah, a lot of people call it the West Bank. So if you are a Jew, it means you are someone who comes from Judea, which a lot of people refer to as the West Bank today. That's what Jew means. I'm not here to make any political statements. I'm not saying what should happen. I'm just telling you that's what it means to be a Jew. That's one of the 12 tribes, Judean. And since most Jews come from that tribe, that's why we're called Jews. But there are 11 other tribes. And the reason there's 12 tribes is, again, each one connected to a particular one of the flows of energy most. Okay. Now, so we're going to talk about 2 months, mostly tonight. And these are 2 months given as examples every month. And we will cover some of the other months throughout the course. But every month has its particular flow of energy. And that affects, to a degree, that affects historically. We have certain things that happen in particular months, and it matches with that month. So today we're going to be talking about the Hebrew months of Adar and Sivan. Adar is the zodiac of Adar is Pisces, which is fish, and the theme that I'd like to discuss. They are discussed in various sources in different ways, but I can't. Basically, we have half an hour each for 2 months or less, including introduction. I can't really go into everything that they represent, but I'm going to pick one main theme, which we see very strongly in that month, and a theme which has some benefit for us. So I'd like to talk in terms of Adar and in terms of fish. I'd like to talk about the quality, the personal trait of being unobtrusive and humble.
What months of the year is that?
That's February to March. Yeah. Another thing about the calendar we use as opposed to the Hebrew calendar, like when we talk about February, there's no natural reason why the 1st of February should be the 1st of February. when we talk about the first of Adar is the day when the new moon comes, where there's a new moon. So it's integrated with nature. The spiritual flows of energy and nature work totally in tandem. Okay, so what's the biggest event that happened in Adar, in the month of Adar? So the biggest event is Purim. Now Purim, a Jewish holiday, there was this vizier, second in command, Haman, who had under his tongue, he had control of the emperor Ahasuerus. He convinced him to allow him to kill all the Jews. Now this would have been, God forbid, in the Holocaust, the Germans at the height of their power had control of maybe half of world Jewry, or whatever the percentage is. Here, this empire had control of 90 to 100% of world Jewry. So this would have been the end, God forbid, of the Jewish people. And but what happened was a series of coincidences happens. There's no miracle. It's not like the splitting of the sea. Ta-da! Come right through. Then it falls on him. There's no miracle. A series of coincidences. There's this. The king gets angry, gets drunk. He kills his wife, the queen. Then he needs a new queen. It wasn't considered a crime really too much in that time for a king to do anything. So he then there's this contest who will be the new queen. This unknown lady gets chosen. She doesn't say what people she comes from. She's actually Jewish. And then just at the right time, last time the king's advisor had advised him to kill the queen. This time the queen advises the king to kill his advisor. So the second queen, Esther, is a Jewish queen, ends up no one knows she's Jewish. At the end, she manages to stop this plot, and then Haman, the king's vizier and main advisor, is killed. But either way, everything in the story happens without being obtrusive, being unobtrusive, because God hides his face. Esther hides her face. Anyone know what the name Esther? There's a few meanings, but a meaning for Esther, or in Hebrew the word lahastir, to hide. It means to hide. So her very name means to be hidden. The name of the holiday is in ancient Persian. It's not in Hebrew, not in the language we're familiar with. It's in ancient Persian. Again, it's hidden. What does the name mean? The name Purim actually means lots, a raffle, because Haman made a raffle to pick when to kill the Jews. Now, normally, if you have a festival, you name it after your success, right? We wouldn't call, in Israel they've had, they've had the War of Independence. They don't call it what was the plan at the beginning of the war? It was aimed to be a war of annihilation. They were going to be annihilated. They don't call it the War of Annihilation, right? It doesn't make sense. Purim is the lots, the raffle to pick when the Jews should be killed. And what do we call the holiday? After the raffle, this lots. It doesn't make sense. But what it does is it hides the miracle. It's being all understated, being all quiet, humble. Now let's think about fish. The Talmud says a statement which we couldn't have imagined until recent times. It says that whatever you have on dry land, the plethora of species we have on dry land, we have at least that amount, if not more, in the water. So what did we always, till recently, we thought there's not that much happening there. We've now become privy to the amazing, the amount of species of animals and plants and whole worlds happening underwater, right? But what's the difference between on land and underwater? What's the main difference? We don't see anything, right? That's it. Perfectly chosen. So we don't see anything, unless we're at Spiritgrow and we can. Spiritgrow allows you to connect to that aspect of your soul which is normally dormant. You normally don't see it. So that's fish. Now, there's a blessing, and this is a beautiful custom that parents bless their children. Either some do it just before Yom Kippur. Some parents bless their children every Friday night. But the blessing, we bless girls to grow up like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, and boys to be like Ephraim and Menashe. Now, then there's probably the most famous blessing from the Torah that we give to people today. There's the songs about it in Hebrew, and it's quite a famous one. There's a song that I'm sure Nava can play for us or sing for us at some time. Hamalach hagoel oti mikora, yivarech et hana'arim, right, etc. The end of this blessing is v'yidzku larov. Jacob is about to pass away, and he wants to bless all his children, but he only blesses 2 of his grandchildren, Ephraim and Menashe. And he blesses them that they should be like fish, b'kerev haaretz, in the midst of the earth, throughout the world. So he's blessing them, v'yidzku, they should be like fish. And this is the people this is the blessing we give until today. We say that may God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. We tell our children, may God make you like fish. What is it about fish? If I gave my child a blessing, may God make you like a donkey. He might not appreciate it. She might not appreciate it. May God make you like fish. Okay. But what it's saying is, what we want to be at that dimension, in that realm, where we're not trying to, it's upmanship. Notice everything I'm doing. We want it to be subtle. The best way to influence someone is if they don't notice that it's your idea. You have this whole discussion, and then at the end they say, oh, I had this great idea. It was actually your idea. But it's their idea. That's fine. As long as they're doing what the right thing to do is, it's their idea. Okay, that's fish. Now, the Hebrew name for Adar is made up of 2 parts. I've divided the word into 2 here. The first letter, is Aleph. It's not a word, but it's a letter. Aleph, and then Dar. What does Dar mean? Yeah. Got a Hebrew speaker. It means to live. So what we want, and this flows on from the idea of fish, is that we want Aleph. Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It represents godly light, godly energy. Aleph stands for light. And the letters in Hebrew are all types of energy. So what we're saying with Adar is we want Aleph, this deep spiritual light, to live amongst us. Like we say with the fish, b'kerev haaretz, that it should be in the midst of the land. It should be with us. This deep spiritual power, but just quiet, unobtrusive. Okay. Now, There are 12 months in the year. As we said, each one represents a certain type of energy. But there is one month which goes beyond this whole idea of the 12 different zodiacs and the 12 combinations of God's name. There's one month which is just pure godliness beyond all 12. And that month is the extra Adar. Right? There's always 12 and then there's 13. We have 12 tribes, and then we have an extra tribe, the Levites. And the Kohanim, the Cohens, are a subset within the Levites. There's 12 tribes besides them, and then they're the 13th. There's 12 months, and then we have this extra month that just pops out some years. There's the Hebrew calendar. This maybe we could have more detail in another class, but the Hebrew calendar wants to accomplish something very complex. It wants to be true to the months. A true lunar month is 29 and a half days, and true to the solar year, which is 365 days and a quarter. Now the problem is that in order to have the months and the years match, they have to be about 30 and a half days. But the real month, if you look in nature, is 29 and a half days. So what do? So every third year approximately, it's actually 7 out of 19 years to be exact, we add in an extra Adar, and that way the calendar stays right. And without calculators, in the Talmud, the times of the Talmud, they gave a equation to do this. There's 7 out of 19, and how many days in each year of those 19, etc. It is, after 2,000 years, it's got, I can't remember the exact amount, it's got about like 12 seconds off or some crazy small amount. It's like, it's so perfect to nature. It's just amazing. And it was far more accurate than the calendar that was being used in the Middle Ages, and that's why they had to change the calendar. One of the popes had to change the calendar because it was getting a bit off, and now the calendar now is a similar level of accuracy to the Talmud's calendar. But anyway, we've got this extra Adar. It's not a month, it's not a type of energy, it's just an extra one. What is this extra type of energy? It's because in subtlety, when God is hidden, there's something actually more powerful than when it's revealed. There's a story with Elijah the prophet. Elijah was known to be a very fiery person. He was very zealous for God. He couldn't stand the immorality that he was witnessing around himself. And after one of his big, I don't know what to call it, he had a big competition to see if God is real or not. And he makes this whole scene where to see whose sacrifice will be accepted, this idolatry or God, and then this fire comes from heaven and burns the sacrifice. Amazing thing. You can go to Israel now, still see the place at Har Carmel, Mount Carmel, where this occurs. But then afterwards, he's instructed by God to go to the desert. He's in the middle of the desert. And suddenly there's this big earthquake. And he thinks, wow, that's powerful. And then the verse says, and if it's so beautiful in the Hebrew, it gives you, besides the words, it gives you the notes, how to sing it. That's how we read the Torah. The Torah comes with it. We've got a tradition what the tune is. So then it says there was an earthquake. Not in the earthquake is God. There was a storm. Not in the storm was God. There was a hurricane. Not in the hurricane was God. Something like that. It's just really beautiful when you read the verses. And then it says there was this small silent sound. Whatever that means. A small silent sound. We're going to try to do some silent sounds. But in that, and then it says, and that was God's presence passing by Elijah. So there was a message for him as well. When he tried to say this is the real God, he says, look, I can produce a fire to burn the sacrifice. You can't do that. Power. And then afterwards he gets his message. Okay, you proved that this is the God. But it's actually not about that. It's about the small, silent voice. Okay, so what's the call to action? It's very difficult. When we have something we're passionate about, we care about it, we want recognition and we want praise and we want appreciation. And that's the right thing to do. If someone does something good, you should announce it. You should thank them. However they want to be appreciated, you should do that. But in terms of us, there's a message not seeking that. It's not what we're focused on. And on the contrary, we're happy and we like this idea of just, doing good without making big noise. Right? It's a very hard message today. Everyone wants, what they ate for breakfast has to be world news, Yeah. Okay. Now, there's a second message. God operates in the same way, especially as we mature as the human species. God says, okay, you're a bit more mature now. You don't need me splitting the sea every day. I'm going to be hidden. I'm going to be subtle. And our job is to notice, in that subtlety, notice God's presence. Okay, thanks for this time. Now, it says if you want to be successful, it says in the Talmud, and the commentaries didn't necessarily understand it without the Kabbalistical perspective. It says if you want to be successful, plant an Adar tree. You want to be successful in agriculture, plant an Adar tree. What is an Adar tree? You can look at how they translate it. Not even sure myself, but they do translate it. But what is it telling us? What's the message? The message is you want God's blessing? Find it in the Adar, find it in the fish, find it beneath the surface, in the water, in the subtlety. We find God's hands when we're looking for it in a hidden way. And that's why business is a good example, because business is where it's very mundane. It's not prayer. That's why you say you want to see God's blessing in business, plant Adar trees. See it in the subtlety. Okay, so that is part one. So Pisces, fish, Adar, hidden beneath the water, unobtrusive. Purim, it represents that idea of hidden. Okay. Now for part two, Gemini. It's the Hebrew month of Sivan. This month is approximately May.
June.
May to June, okay.
20th of June.
Huh?
It goes to the 20th or 20th.
Okay, every year it's different, but from May to June. So Adar was February to March, Nisan is March to April, Iyar is April to May, Sivan is May to June. Okay. So the message here is a message of harmony. And we don't just mean harmony, we mean external harmony. Yes, of course, we want harmony between peoples, but we also want harmony within ourselves. We're very complex creatures. I mean, if you talk about, I've got, someone says, I've got two voices in me, and then, Kabbalah talks about the animal soul and the godly soul. That's already two. If you talk about the voice of each of the 7 sefirot or even the 10th sefirot within you, oh my goodness, you're going to have so many voices in there. Forget about it. But there's a lot going on within us. And what we want is both an external harmony in terms of us and others, and also an internal harmony within ourselves. Judaism is a relationship system. It's a three-way relationship system. We have God to us, which is Torah. In Torah, God gives us guidance and we study it, understand it, develop it, but it starts from up to down. Then we have prayer. In prayer, it starts from us, goes up. So this is so far two ways in the communication. Then we have a third way in the communication, which is from one of us to another one of us. And that's also that's a central part of Judaism, is interpersonal relationships. We don't want, we talk a lot about tolerance today. Tolerance, it's wonderful because it's better than lobbing the guy next to you over the head with a hammer, so that's wonderful. But tolerance is not good. If I tolerate someone, that means they stink, they're annoying, I can't stand them, but I'll tolerate them. Tolerate, wonderful, tolerance. That's why I'm not going to start with tolerance. But what we really want is to see the good in others and see the inner core, the oneness in everything. So maybe that's step one, but definitely we don't want to end. If someone says it's a very tolerant person, it's good as a step one. Step two is not just to tolerate people, but to like people as well. How do we get to... Okay, sorry. First we should think about the zodiac. Gemini. What does Gemini mean? Twins. Normally, when you have two people, that's the beginning of the problems. If you want a world without any division, any fighting, any arguments and hatred, one person. One person. As soon as you have two, it's already starting to get complicated, right? So what is the best we can do to have two people but united? Possibly, at least in terms of nature, we could talk about marriage, but in terms of nature, representation of two that can come together, twins. Identical twins, even better. Not necessarily. They don't always like each other, you're right, and sometimes... They compete all the time. Yes, but twins... Huh? Twins are always so together. Okay, yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. So that's the idea of Gemini. The idea of Gemini is that we have two. It's not one person anymore. There's two people. But despite that, they can come together. There's harmony. Now, Sivan is the month of the giving of the Torah. The giving of the Torah was about a relationship. When the Torah was given, God came down onto the mountain, and Moshe, went up on the mountain. So if you imagine you have, let's say, two people who are very far away, and then they find some place where they can come together. And this is not only with physical location, but this is, of course, mostly a meeting of the minds. You can have either people have very different views, and each one cannot see how the other view is totally wrong and actually bad. And for two people with such different views, it takes a real something deeper has to be revealed in order to let them see the other one's perspective. We see it in many areas. there was one politician, an American politician, who said actually I think it was Joe Biden, the vice president under Obama, who said that one time there was a debate in Congress about adoption laws or foster children, something to do with that. And there was one Republican senator that was advocating something, and he says he was thinking, and he said, I think as well, this guy is just cruel. He doesn't care about the children. And then he discovered that this senator actually had multiple foster children who didn't have a home, living in his house. So then he said, what I learned from that is, you can criticize the policies, but don't jump to this conclusion that this is a bad person. You might disagree with the ideas they're advocating, but doesn't mean that they're a wicked person, an evil person. This is something he learned. But it's often very hard to see that when we get very heated. Okay, so twins is telling us there might be two, but we can come together. The Torah was, again, that same idea. The Torah combines opposites. We had on one hand, Naaseh, we said at the time of the giving of the Torah, we said we will do, which is just about action. And then on the other hand, Nishma, we will understand. So these are two very different perspectives. You might have the philosopher who's sitting there and analyzing all the details, and the other one who says, okay, what's the job that needs to be done? I'm ready to do it. And then we bring that together in the Torah. We have two luchot, two tablets. One tablet has the laws between man and God, human and God, and the other between us humans, interpersonal relationships. And then some people might pick only one side of the one tablet. What we have to know is there is no service of God without being a mensch with people, and the ultimate, if you want to really be the best person in terms of interpersonal relationships that you can, introducing God into your life, introducing soul, faith, these ideas can make you the best person you can be, also in interpersonal relations. If it's not doing it, then there's something wrong in the first tablet. The first tablet should bring to the best of the second tablet, and the second tablet should fit like a puzzle with the first tablet. So we have a lot of sort of differences that then have to come together. Okay. The left leg. Now there's this fascinating book called Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. Anyone heard of it? Yeah. Got one or two have heard of it. Now and more. So this book is attributed to the teachings when Abraham was starting monotheism. He had some sort of ideas that he was promoting. And this book is attributed, it's not a long book, attributed to the ideas that Abraham would have been promoting in talking about monotheism. The book, basically, it's based on the idea of the Book of Formation. It's about how the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet form reality. As I said, each one has a certain energy, and they form reality. And it connects the letters, 12 of the letters, with the 12 zodiacs. It connects them with 12 parts of the body. It also talks about 12 senses. Normally we talk about 5 senses, but it adds some more sort of abilities to get to have 12 senses, and it connects each sense with one letter, and with this letter connects to a month, a zodiac, a part of the body, etc. And basically, you can make a chart which includes most of the book, which is just a chart. And I have made such a chart for a previous class I gave a couple of years ago, which just goes through the 12 months, 12 zodiacs, 12 parts of the body, 12 senses, 12 Hebrew letters, and then explain how each line fits together. And I'm doing, it's just, it would take, depends how we do it, but it would take a long time to go through it properly. I will just say for your own research, the letter connected to, we won't talk about it now, to Sivan, to Gemini, is the letter Zion. The letter connected to Adar is Kuf. We're not going to talk about it too much now, but there's reasons for all of this. But what I will say is the part of the body that connects with Gemini, with twins and with Sivan, is the left leg. 2 months earlier, in Nisan, we have the right leg. Now, what we must have been doing is hopping along for 2 months until we got to Sivan, which is the left leg. And that actually represents what Sivan's about. I was just thinking, especially in terms of the back, how is it with standing versus sitting? What would you like? Sitting, standing, either? No? Just move. Huh? Are you okay with sitting? Stand? Okay. Okay. Harmony, what do we do? Do a bit of both? Or okay. So the first, the Nisan is the first leg, the right leg, which means that you can jump out. You can jump, but you can only jump once with one leg. You can't walk and walk and walk and continue, right? That represents the idea that you're inspired and then you take the plunge. Sivan is when you have 2 legs. Now it's not about inspiration. I mean, there's also inspiration, but now it's about harmony, meaning between the drudgery of just doing what you're meant to be doing day in, day out, and the excitement of just your first jump. Okay. So it's the left leg, and of the 12 senses or abilities, it is walking, progressing, which fits with the left leg. It's actually interesting, the word for halacha means to walk. Halacha is Jewish law, but it means to walk. Now, yeah. Cool. Yeah, okay. There is that connection as well. The letter Zayin is connected with Malchut and feminine. So we've got a balance on one hand, and we've got our inspiration, and then we've got the getting into the details. Now, there's this famous story in the Talmud. A prospective convert comes before Hillel. Hillel's a leading sage. And the convert says, I really want to be Jewish. It's deep in my soul. The problem is I have AD, HD, D. I can listen to you as long as I can stand on one leg. Tell me what I need to know, and, So now there was 2 sages. Shammai says, what? You're making a mockery of this. It's not serious. You just want to hear on one foot? Get lost. Then Hillel says, don't do to others what you wouldn't like done to yourself. That is the basis. Now go and learn, and you'll learn all the details. So there's a lot of interpretation of what he was saying. But what I'd like to share tonight is that he's saying the first step is love. It starts with love. You're not hurting others and you're loving others. That is the first leg, the right leg. in that month, Nisan, God just says, you know what? You're in the muck, you're in the dirt, you're slaves, you're in Egypt, you're spiritually impure as well. You're not connected with spirituality. I'll just take you, throw you out. You're free. We're free. Woohoo. That's step one. That is the first leg. The convert was really asking, why do we have this system? What's the point of the first leg? What is the point of getting God to just help us and throw us out of our problem when we come crashing down right afterwards? Right? We get inspired. How many people have started a project and then it stops after one day? Right? A few people relate to that? If we get inspired, or if it's not one day, it's a week or whatever it is, we get excited and then all done. So the right leg is when you get excited. The convert says, what's the point of this? He's asking about this one leg. I've got one leg, I can take a jump, I get inspired, but then it just falls down. So Hillel responds to him and says, step number one is love. And with that, you will be able to continue and get into the detail without getting stuck. That's what he was saying. He says, love others, and now go and learn. So, speaking a little in riddles, I'll maybe share something to help you understand this. Okay. The Talmud says before we're born, we are taught the whole Torah. Then right before we're born, an angel comes, knocks it all out of us. We forget it all. And then the question becomes, well, what was the point of all that learning? They feed it all to us. The baby is so full of the spirituality of Torah knowledge, amazing. But then when it's born, it's forgotten everything. So the answer is, because yes, it's forgotten everything, but then when you come back and try to reconnect with those ideas, they're already familiar inside your soul. Right? So it's a similar question to inspiration. We got all this inspiration, all this Torah knowledge, in the case of the baby, and then it's forgotten, but at least it helps you afterwards. So what do we mean practically? If you're excited one day, the more you can connect it with something practical, the better it will last, right? The more that you can say, okay, I'm excited, what am I actually going to do, and make an actual plan, connect it with, practical details, that's how it lasts more. And even if it doesn't, when you eventually do it, you'll be able to call back on that inspiration that excited you in the first place, right? And this is what the Hillel was saying to the convert. You've got a problem with one leg, it's just inspiration. Don't worry, one leg is the passion, the love. Once you have the inspiration and the love, then later you'll be able to go and learn as well. How does this connect back to harmony? Harmony means that we are not fragmented. You ask someone, what do you do? You ask someone, who are you? They give you, I wrote about this recently, they give you their business card. Why your business card? I asked, who are you? I didn't ask what your job is, right? Or who are you? I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a whatever. I didn't ask about that. I asked, who are you? But people very much associate that with who they are. Now, other people, we all have different sort of centers, what we're about. For someone else, it might be a certain cause that they're focusing on, or family, or friends, or being popular. There was someone who was really upset. They needed to get engaged in a way, and I was called into this because it caused a big fight. They wanted to be engaged in a way which would get maximum likes on Facebook. And someone realized they were getting engaged and mentioned, and then already people were starting to realize, and then they had to just announce it, and then they didn't get the amount of likes on Facebook that they wanted. And it was a real serious issue, and it had to be negotiated and make peace and whatever it was. So, getting a bit off the topic. So if your center is about how many likes you have on Facebook, that's your inner core, then there's a bit of a problem. We've got to find some sort of inner core that unites everything. This is who I am, and therefore that's why I have my social life fits into that, my job fits into that, my family fits into that. Everything fits into one inner core of who am I in an integrated way. And that is the inner harmony, right? A lot of the self-help books and 7 Habits talks about finding your inner core. But really it comes from this idea of Sivan. Sivan is about harmony. Harmony between your excitement and getting the job done. Harmony between your spiritual side and just being a mensch, practically, being a good person practically. Harmony in every way. Harmony, and therefore, out of that comes harmony between people. The best way to have harmony between people is when you see the oneness between them, right? It's the best way. Whenever if you find the common denominator and see how we're one, that's the best way to achieve harmony. And that's this idea of twins, that we're not, yes, we're two, but we were in one womb together. We're one. We come from the same parents. Okay, so what do we have to do as I've got as the call to action? What we've got to do, what we've got to think about is, does the way I'm living my life make sense with what I feel my life is about? What is my inner core? And is my life, is it going in the way according to who I am, who I want to be? And if not, we've got to sort of redesign a little bit. We've got to say, okay, this is who I am. This is what's important to me. Now, all the spokes that come out of the center of the wheel have to match with that inner core. Okay, so that is the harmony through a solid inner core. This will help within yourself and also with others. Any questions?
So I just want to know, in this world we're living, is there much harmony going on?
Is there much harmony and respect? Well, what should I say? There's a lot of harmony and a lot of disharmony. The thing is that we can't just be spectators. We've got a job to do. You know, there was a fellow. He was one of the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent him as an emissary to Israel in the 70s, and his first task was to go through the whole Israel and report and look at what's happening. And that's what he spent a few weeks doing, that, going from town to town, looking at what was available, the religious offering, the educational offering, the social offering. And then he wrote this long report to the Rebbe of everything that's right and everything that's wrong. More was wrong than right, of course. How do we see things? We see the problems. And he wrote this whole report, and then the Rebbe wrote back, so therefore, like, what are you going to do about it? And he said, and he's come to Melbourne, I've spoken to him, and he said that this was like a major shift for him. Until then, he had been a commentator, and now, what are you doing about this? So, you know what? It is hard. What should I say? And I'm not preaching. I'm talking to myself, and everyone here is welcome to listen as I talk to myself. Yeah, okay. If we're crazy, that's okay. That's, crazy people, they're not limited in what they can achieve. So what I say to myself is that what can I do about it? And yeah, I don't know, what should I say? If the world is not where it should be, then that means we've still got some work to do. But in business, for example, they're talking now, I don't know if everyone's applying it, but they're at least talking about win-win solutions. They're talking about first listen and then you'll be heard, and as a business strategy. They're talking about finding common interests. So they are talking about it. The Rebbe saw the women's rights, as a precursor to Mashiach. That's in the 60s and 70s. The Rebbe spoke about that a number of times. That this idea of as the world in different ways improves, it's going somewhere. Okay. Yeah.
Can I just ask you? Every so often there's call it an article in the magazine and paper regarding the position of the stars and personalities, birth dates, that sort of thing. Is there a correlation in the Torah or in some Jewish respect? Is there does the position of the planets at different times of year impact on our daily lives, on our future?
So, we talk about on one hand that each month has a certain energy, and therefore that energy sort of represents also a personality and certain types of events. On the other hand, as Menachem spoke last week, we're not limited by that. It says, Ein Mazel Yisrael, that Israel, Jewish people, that shouldn't focus on it too much and shouldn't worry about it, because we can rise above. We can be, what we should aim for is, like we spoke about Adar, there's that extra month, which is not any of the 12. So that's where our goal is. And therefore, although, according to most, of Jewish tradition, there is truth to the general ideas. I don't know about all the specifics of how they interpret it, but the general idea, according to most, has truth, but it's not how we shouldn't feel bound by it or have to operate based on it, because there's a whole nother plane, which is that Adar Bet plane. You don't brainwash yourself by what you read in the... Yeah, no, just say I could do it and whatever it is. But there is a message. You can take a message. Adar is that being unobtrusive and humble, and Sivan is harmony and an integrated self. So they all have a certain message. There was even one sage who said that because of when he was born, he was going to connect to blood. So he says, I could have been a murderer. I could have been a doctor who also deals with blood. I could have been a slaughterer, or someone who's a butcher or something like that. Blood donator. So now, so that means that even if he felt he had a connection with blood, how are you going to live that out can be very varied.
Hashem syntheses energy, so you get a different energy for each month. Yeah. And people generally slot, pretty evenly across January to December or Adar. Otherwise, if we're all the same, you'd never get harmony.
Okay, so there's harmony through difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's no harmonising.
So there's two aspects with harmony. On one hand, we're talking about that they're twins. On the other hand, and this is also the whole idea of twins is you have two, which means that they're separate, but then they find this inner core. Well, we're actually both from parents. I think we might as well, huh?
One and then split.
Right, one to two. So, but there's also the other way around. You have two people, and then they're like, who are you? Who are you? And then they, wait a sec, we're actually twins. We actually come from one. So on one hand, harmony comes from differences. On the other hand, how does it come from differences? One of their ways is by seeing how all of us fit into one mosaic. There's a museum in New York called the Jewish Children's Museum, and the front of the building, it's maybe a 5-story building, the front of the building is made up of hundreds or thousands of faces of children. And all of them together form one face. So it's really beautiful. You can look it up, JCM, Jewish Children's Museum. Okay. Chaos theory, okay. And actually is one face. Yeah. Okay, maybe last question and we'll...
Just another quick one. You mentioned that everyone should have a Jewish or a Hebrew name. Tradition, as I understand it, is that a family, somebody gets married, they give their child a grandparent's name or a distant relative's name. Is that just basically because of tradition, or is that because of the spiritual element that's involved?
Okay, so, well, people do it simply. People often name after grandparents or great-grandparents, and that would be because, well, on a simple level, they want to honor them. But there's also that idea of they had a particular quality, a particular energy, and we're bringing down that energy. And that's also the idea of people naming after biblical characters or different righteous people, different tzaddikim, in order to draw down, hopefully, their energy. Anyway, I think we're over time, so I think we'll say good night. But if you have, I've told this before, I won't say it at length, I'll just say you have two, what's your Hebrew name? It's the same as your English. That's good. So if you have two Gavriels, you have two grandfathers Gavriel, and you don't know which, you know the joke, yeah? No? Two parents came with the argument. They came to the rabbi and says, we've got this fight over what name to give. What do you want to give? The mother says Gavriel. What do you want to give? Gavriel. So the rabbi says, what's the argument? He says, well, my grandfather was a good man. His grandfather was a terrible man. So what does the rabbi do? He thinks for a minute, says, you know what? Name the child Gavriel. But which grandfather will be named after? We'll see. If he behaves like this one, it'll be this one. Okay. Anyway, have a good night.
Thank you.